Hi, my name is Kieran, and this is my orchestration scripts project. So this quarter, my motivation was building from last quarter, which I understood the issues of help seeking from a student's perspective, and then paired with previous research on mentors' perspective and their obstacles, it granted a complete picture of the scenario. The next step in understanding how to overcome these obstacles was creating scripting language that could orchestrate change in students' work strategies organized by mentors, completing tasks such as making sure that students update their sprint log after sprint, and various other goals that mentors want to achieve through this scripting language. To do so, I had to understand what made scripting hard for mentors. So the approach I used this quarter was iterative prototyping. This allowed me to uncover obstacles and characteristics while also improving my prototyping language at the same time, improving it and changing the testing and the prototype after each user test based on their feedback, and work on design arguments and with different DTR mentors. This is the final prototype with 4 components: a time component, resource component, communication, and a set of functions. So the time component allows you to input a modifier that can be specific up to the hour, so 2 hours before or after something, and then it includes all DTR events such as different time frames or different weekly meetings, allowing you to be super specific with when these things happen and when you can check up on things. Resources, this is a list of the common DTR resources that students and mentors use throughout the week. You can also similarly access specific portions of them, such as the specific section of your research canvas or a specific sprint in your sprint log. This allows for mentors or whoever's using the scripting language to access different DTR resources easily. And then communication allows for Slack messages to be sent automatically, similar to a Slack bot, choosing recipient, and then also can be sent via email if necessary. And then the set of functions allows you to do a various number of things, and this will be growing as the language grows. So doing something weekly, possibly with this every function, and then with the was updated, checking if things are updated at a certain time. This is set doing something at a certain time based on a time that you input. Fulfillment allows feedback from whoever you're reaching out to, whether it be a student, to make sure that they've completed something so that you can orchestrate based on their response. And then resources gives mentors a list of all the available resources that they can use during scripting, sort of something that they can look back and use as a tool to help them create these scripts. So findings from this, through the various iterations and prototyping, it was found that it was extremely important that resources and time were able to be specific and also flexible. So it wasn't enough to just be able to say during sprint 3 you wanted to be able to do specifically at the beginning, middle, or end, or even you wanted to be able to cite like the second hour of studio. You wanted something to be orchestrated. So being super specific and also flexible with how you arrange things allowed for people to express their users to express their goals and their scripts in different ways, and how they want to orchestrate these scripts. So the second thing was structure. Yet a structured yet flexible language was important for usability. So making sure that the different functions were able to be added together and moved around in different ways, and rather simplistic in their inputs and not too restrictive, but also fleshed out enough so that the user was able to understand what they were using it for and what it did. Allowing students' response was important for orchestrating certain tasks, making sure things were completed or not. You wanted to get that feedback so that you don't keep sending reminders or doing whatever your script is built to do repeatedly if it has already been completed. So allowing this student response was extremely important in completing mentor tasks. And then examples were helpful in teaching new users how to use the language and different functions. And then a list of resources was helpful in developing solutions as it gave mentors new ideas and how to approach problems when presented with different resources they weren't sure they would need to use or wouldn't have thought to use, which we'll get to conceptual stretching, which is an obstacle that I found during this process. So this is the design argument. Mentors want to access a set of resources and commands, allow them to orchestrate scripts to conduct some function of or tasks of mentoring autonomously. So, for example, making sure students update their sprint log after each SIG each week. So mentors struggle to conceptually stretch when developing scripting plans, meaning that they struggle to use resources that they haven't used before or different approaches to understanding how to approach a mentoring problem or solution from a scripting standpoint. They also become blocked when they are not sure how to approach these problems. So the characteristics of the language is that it is structured to give them direction, sort of overcoming this blockage when they're approaching their problems, and also giving them the ease of ability to express their ideas through this language, and also giving them access to all of DTR's resources and presenting them to them to try and overcome this conceptual stretch obstacle. So things that I learned this quarter was that when advising students, mentors struggle to conceptually stretch their search of resources, only using ones that they are familiar with. This is limiting when trying to advise students in many different ways, and also limiting in smaller, more simple tasks, such as just making sure that everybody's status update is scheduled. Some people forget about certain documents that might have information that they need, and having that all the documents presented to them will remind them and allow them to conceptually stretch to use these resources that will make their scripts more effective. Users struggle to script tasks when the language is restrictive, not specific enough, or confusing. This was an issue with many of the earlier prototypes in that some of the functions were extremely specific and could only be used one way, and mentors felt like they weren't given the tools that they needed to complete tasks, whether it be simple or complex. So making sure to reduce the language so that it is down to bare building blocks that can be put together to build more complex functions instead of having already pre-built complex functions. And then students are using DTR resources regularly and how mentors expect them to be for the most part. So in my status update, I was able to ask the students of DTR how they were using the DTR resources, since that is one of the largest data sources for all of these scripting, for the scripting language, and is extremely important when writing these scripts, is an assumption that students are regularly updating their DTR resources, which for the most part most students were. So next steps, through the prototype testing, the language, I learned a lot about what was necessary for users. I think that continuing to develop this language into something that is usable will be the best way to uncover more obstacles that the users face and fine-tune the characteristics of the language. On top of that, continuing to do need finding on the idea of conceptual stretching for mentors to hopefully add characteristics to the language or interface that promotes or makes stretching easier for mentors. So right now, presenting them with a list of the possible resources is the current characteristic, but doing more need finding to find out how we can improve that, I think, is a good next step. So my takeaways from DTR this quarter was the importance of understanding the reasoning of your actions. So going into studies with a goal in mind and knowing that the questions you're asking directly address your risks and will leave you with an answer, and also giving you direction when you're prototyping and taking these approaches. It makes it a lot easier to go in with a goal in mind and sort of know what you're looking for. How to slice to focus on addressing risks, so going into some of these larger problems and risks without an idea of like the next step, being able to to reduce it to more simplistic tasks this quarter allowed me to focus in on sort of the scripting language and why that was hard, not exactly working on hard problems and why they were hard. And then the last thing was identifying confusion and developing questions. So there are parts of this quarter where I felt lost, and I think that it's important to identify that feeling and turn it into a specific question that you can either answer yourself or reach out to somebody and ask, instead of just sort of being stuck in this state of feeling lost. So a lot of takeaways this quarter that I think will be super helpful in the future. Thank you for watching, and that was my quarter.